Hello, freak bitches. Well, you're also very concerned with AI as well, right? Artificial intelligence?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's, I think, in this category of, if you look at the history of human progress, technological change just creates these huge step changes in just how humanity progresses. So it was only 12 years in 1933 to then 1945 between Leo Szilard first coming up with the idea of the nuclear chain reaction. And that was just a purely conceptual idea on a bit of paper. 12 years from that to then the deployment of the first nuclear bomb. And think how radical a change that is, having suddenly being in the nuclear age. That was only 12 years.
Yeah,
And,
we went over the invention of the airplane to dropping an atomic bomb out of the airplane. And I believe it was 50 years, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 years?
Yeah,
Isn't that take a few?
Yeah, so technological progress can suddenly go in these huge leaps.
That we're
And
not prepared for.
that we're often very not prepared for. And I think artificial intelligence is in this category where we're really making radical progress in AI, especially over the last 5 years. It's really one of the fastest developing technologies, I think, and yet has huge potential in so many different ways. And as with any new technology, huge positive potential. Really, if you get AI right, you can solve almost any other problem. But also potential risks as well, where there's risk that might be more familiar, worries about automation, unemployment, worries about autonomous weapons, which I think should be taken seriously. And then also just worries about, well, what if we really do manage to make human-level artificial intelligence? There's very good arguments that would then quickly move to superhuman-level artificial intelligence. And what then? Are we now in a situation like the Neanderthals versus Homo sapiens, where we've suddenly created this intelligence that is greater than our own? Are we able to control that? Are we able to ensure that that transition is positive rather than negative?
Have you ever considered the possibility when you look at all the impoverished people in the world, all the cruelty, all the people that are so just concerned with material possessions and shallow thinking and war and just the evil that men do? Is it possible that we're sort of an outdated concept, that what we are as these biological organisms that are still slaves to the whole Darwinian evolutionary survival of the fittest, natural selection sort of paradigm that we've operated under for all these many thousands and hundreds of thousands of years as humans? Is it possible that we're giving birth to the next thing? That just like we don't long for the days when we used to be monkeys throwing shit at each other from the trees, one day we will be something different, whether it would be a combination of us and these machines, or whether we're going to augment our own intelligence with some sort of artificial, whether it's some sort of an exo brain or something that's going to take us to that, or it's going to be simply that we create artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence no longer has use for us because we're illogical, and then that becomes the new life form.
Yeah.
And then we're hide in the cave somewhere, hoping the Terminators don't get us.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, over the long term, I mean, with all of these things, the question of kind of timelines is very hard. And sometimes people want to reject this sort of discussion because, oh, this is so far in the future. Whereas I think, like, if something's sufficiently important, we should be talking about it even if maybe it's, decades or generations hence.
It might not be, right? I mean, it might not be that far away.
But who knows? Like with the atomic bomb, that was hugely fast progress, just 12 years. So we want to be prepared. But then as for is it going to be Homo sapiens around for the next, in 1,000 years' time? I think that would just be extremely unlikely.
That will be around? You think we're not going to be around anymore? Yeah,
I mean, I think if intelligent creatures are still around, it's going to be in 1,000 years' time, it's going to be something that's not Homo sapiens, like you said. There's kind of three... or it's like not what we would consider kind of typical humans now.
Well, we're obviously severely flawed, right? I mean, if you ask people, if you ask the average person, do you think that in your lifetime you can imagine a world without war? Most people say no. Like the vast majority of people say no.
Yeah.
A world without crime, a world without violence, a world without theft. Most people say no. that just shows you how inherently flawed most people view the human species. You know, we know that we can do it in small groups.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if the three of us were on an island, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be stealing from each other and murdering each other, right?
Yep,
Just
yep.
a few of us. But when you get to large-scale humanity, it becomes very easy to disassociate or create this diffusion of responsibility where there's, you know, enough people so you don't really value them as much, and you're allowed to get away with some pretty heinous stuff, especially when you consider drone warfare, things that we're able to do long distance where we're not seeing the person that we're having the effect on.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a very flawed thing, the human species. Wouldn't it be better if something better came along?
I mean, I think there's, yeah.
Sorta.
Yeah, I think there's
Not
a case
good for
that.
you
I
and
mean,
I, though.
not, well,
We'd be obsolete.
yeah, I mean, well, we're going to be obsolete in 100 years anyway. I mean, as in, we'll be dead.
Right.
So the question is just, will our kind of, you know, generations hence, will, you know, it's not, the question's not really about us, it's about our grandchildren, let's
Well,
say.
it really forces the idea to be considered, like, what is valuable about life? Like, is it the experience? Is it happiness? Is it shared fun? Is it love? Like, what's valuable about being a person?
Yeah.
And how much of that is going to change if we're made out of something that people have created, or maybe we're made out of something artificial intelligence has created because we've created something that's far superior to us.
So yeah, I mean, I have a view on this, as you might expect, where,
Yeah.
I mean, in my view, the thing that's valuable, and the only thing that's valuable ultimately, is conscious experience. So that's good, good conscious experiences, happiness, joy, and so on. That's positive. That's good for the world. Negative conscious experiences, suffering, pain, distress, those are bad for the world. And so that's why, you know, it's a good thing for me to do some service to you, to benefit you, but I can't do anything good to benefit this bottle of water.
Right.
And so then the key question in terms of what should we think about, supposing it is the case that, you know, 1,000 years' time, it's now synthetic life, it's artificial intelligence or something that's that are in charge and there are no longer any humans. Would this be good or bad? The question for me is, you know, are they having conscious experiences, and are those conscious experiences good or bad?
So that's it. Just conscious experience.
Yeah. So it's a
That seems
controversial.
so selfish.
It's a controversial view. There's a thought experiment which is often used to challenge this view. Do you want to hear it?
Yes.
So it's called the experience machine. And the idea is, supposing that tomorrow you could plug into this machine. It's like the most amazing VR you could ever have. And in this machine, you will live for, let's say you'll live for 200 years, and you'll be in the most amazing bliss. You'll have the most amazing experiences of, you know, and your experiences will involve incredible relationships, incredible creative achievement, and so on. And it'll just be like the perfect life that you could live experientially for the next 200 years. And the question is, insofar as you are self-interested, so put aside considerations you might have about wanting to make the world a better place, but just insofar as you care about yourself, would you plug into this thing? Bearing in mind that in a certain sense, all of these experiences are going to be fake. You're going to have experiences of having amazing friendships, writing great works of art, and creating great works of art, and so on. But they're not going to be real. It's just sensory inputs provided by a computer.
Right.
So the question is, would you, or ought you, insofar as you're self-interested, plug into this machine? What would you answer?
That's a very good question. I might already be plugged into it, right?
I mean, so this is a great question.
Right.
And I think it's a good argument against, is the question, well, supposing you were already plugged in, would you unplug? Supposing I told you that actually you're a banker in Monaco and...
Fuck Monaco. I'm not interested in that. No. I want to stay right here.
Yeah.
So can I stay plugged in, please? Do I have to pay more? What do I have to do?
You would have to do nothing. But it's interesting then if people think... So most people, and it seemed like maybe yourself, would intuitively you'd say, no, I wouldn't plug into this machine.
I don't know if I would say that. I would
Okay.
have to really deeply consider it, because right now it's just so abstract, this idea that could be possible. It's fantasy. We're having fun. But when you talk to the leading minds when it comes to virtual reality or artificial reality or simulation theory. You know, when they start talking about what will be possible one day, they're going to, without a doubt, within 100 years or 500 years or whatever the number is, they're going to be able to create an artificial reality that's indiscernible from this reality. You're going to be able to feel things. There's going to be emotions that come to you. They're going to be able to recreate every single aspect of an everyday life. It's just a matter of time. I mean, they're really close now, and not really close in terms of like they don't give you emotions and they don't give you feeling, but if you put on an HTC Vive and go through some of those virtual reality games, I mean, it's bizarre how real it feels.
Yeah.
And when you go back to like playing Pong, did you ever play Pong?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's such a weird thing that happened inside of when I was a kid. Pong came along and we were blown away. We couldn't believe that we could actually do something on the television and you could see it move. It was so fantastic. And if you gave that to one of my kids, they'd spit on it. They'd be like, what kind of piece of shit video game is this? Like, they would think it's just so ridiculous. But to me, at the time, it was amazing. You go from that to one of these HTC Vive games, which has all taken place within my lifetime, and you go, well, a lifetime from now, if you follow the exponential increase in the ability, the technological innovation, it's going to be spectacular. I mean, it's going to be...
Absolutely.
So when that does happen, how will you be able to know? If it's indiscernible, how will you know if you're in it? And how do you know if you're not in it right now? That's the real question, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are actually some arguments for thinking, you know, this is Nick Bostrom, a colleague of mine, his simulation argument for thinking we are in a simulation right now. In fact, it's very likely that we should be.
Yeah.
That
do you buy that?
I'm kind of agnostic. I think you should take the hypothesis seriously. But I think the argument doesn't quite go through for
what's attractive and what's not attractive about that theory to you. Okay, his version of it.
Yeah, so the argument is that
frame it if you could, like his version of it.
Yeah, so his argument is that in the future, supposing we believe that the human race doesn't go extinct, or post-humans don't go extinct over the next few thousand years, and secondly that the people in the future have an interest in recreating their past, just for kind of historical interest or for learning, that they're going to be interested in running, because they're now going to have huge, amazing computer power. They're going to be able to create simulations of the past. That they're going to have some interest in running simulations of the past. Well, if that is true, then the number of simulations that these future people are going to be running will vastly outnumber the number of actual timelines, the kind of base universe, as it were. So for the one real universe where history kind of unfolds, there's also, let's call it, 10,000 simulations of that universe. And if that's true, then it's the case that, well, given that I'm just, these things really are indiscernible for the people who are inside them, it's overwhelmingly likely, just in the base rate, that I'm going to be in a simulation rather than in the real world. And what Nick Bostrom says, actually, is not that we definitely are in a simulation, but he just points out the conflict between these three kind of beliefs that we would seem to hold. One is that we're not going to go extinct in the near future. Two is that people in the future will have some interest in simulating the past. And thirdly, that we're not living in a simulation. And he himself gives, a reasonable degree of belief. Maybe he thinks it's like 10% likely, 15% likely that we're in a simulation. Other people who understand the argument vary a bit more, but I think, it's something you should at least be taking seriously. The reason I reject it is kind of even weirder, I think, or it's somewhat technical. But the basic thought is just that according to the best guesses from cosmologists, we're actually in an infinite universe. The universe is infinitely big. Now, we can't affect an infinitely big universe. We're restricted by the speed of light to what we can affect and to what we can see. But the best idea, according to the best theory we have, universe just kind of keeps on going. But if so, then there's already an infinite number of observers, of people kind of in that bottom universe. And that means that you've now got kind of an infinite number of people kind of experiencing things, and then you've got the simulations, and you've got like 10,000 simulations. But you can't say there's 10,000 times as many simulated beings as there are real beings, because there's already an infinite number of real beings. You're looking so consternated.
No. Go ahead. Keep going.
But that means if you've got... So the key of Bostром's argument was that you've got 10,000 times as many simulated beings as you have real, like, non-simulated beings. And
but
so
the
it should
problem is an infinite number of real beings because the universe is infinite.
Yeah, that's right. And so if you've already got an infinite number of real beings, the fact that you've got 10,000 times infinite, that's still infinite.
Right.
And you can't... It's kind of a case where, like, our best methods of assigning degrees of belief to things kind of run out. If you think it's, there's an infinite number of simulated beings, an infinite number of real beings, then what's the chance of you being one or the other? I mean, we don't actually have the tools to be able to answer that.
Neil deGrasse Tyson was trying to explain this to me a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
That there are infinities that are bigger than other infinities.
Yeah, so that's also the case. But yeah, that was right.
Broke my brain again.
Yeah. So but the key, we're all talking about the lowest, what's called cardinality, the smallest infinity, which is the size of the infinity of all the integers, 1, 2, 3, 4,
right.
the counting numbers. And if you take that size of infinity and multiply it by 10,000, let's say, you just get the same number, which is infinity.
Right.
And then what Neil was saying was, there are these even bigger levels of infinity. So if you look at not just all the counting numbers, but all of the numbers you can make fractions out of, a half, a quarter, an eighth, and so on. That's just more numbers than the infinity of the counting numbers.
I've spent a lot of time trying to understand why human beings are so obsessed with innovation, why human beings are so obsessed with technological progress. And one of the things that I continue to come to is that we think of everything in this world as being natural, but the behavior of butterflies and wolves and the way rivers run down from the mountain. But we don't think of ourselves and our own behavior as natural. We don't think of our own thirst for conquest and innovation and the even materialism. I think materialism is probably a very natural reaction to our need to somehow or another fuel innovation. And that one of the ways to ensure that innovation is constantly fueled is that people are constantly obsessed with buying new things, constantly obsessed with the latest and greatest, which fuels innovation. And when you look at the universe itself and you look at all the various things that we know to be natural processes in the universe, like in order to make a human being, a star has to explode. When you literally are made out of stardust, just when you run that by people for the first time, they go, wait, what? Like, in order for you to have carbon-based life form, that has to be created inside a burning, dying star. And that's the only way you make this thing, like what you are right now. And then that thing makes artificial reality. And then that thing makes perhaps even crazier. If you follow the ideas of technological progress, if something gets to a point where it's indiscernible from reality, how do you know it's not a new reality? How do you know it's not a new kind of reality? Like, Jamie sent me hip to these artificial worlds that people have created online where they're essentially infinite and they're constantly changing and morphing and growing, and the games are terrible. People don't like them because you go to places and there's fucking nothing there.
Yeah.
And you can go to an infinite number of these places and there's nothing there. Like, these adventures are non-existent. So you're in these gigantic fake worlds where you're traveling from place to place, but right now we're looking at it in a very two-dimensional way. You're looking at it on a flat screen. One day it's not going to be two-dimensional. One day it's going to be something that you're interfacing with. Your consciousness is interfacing with it. Is it only real if we can take it and drop it on something? If we can hit it with a hammer? If we could put it on a scale? If we could use a measuring stick and measuring it? Is it only real there? Or is it real if it follows every single check? Like, if you check off every single item on the list of conscious reality and conscious experience?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because I think the dichotomy that a lot of people think in terms of natural and non-natural, I think it's just meaningless. I mean, people firstly think this is natural and this is not. I mean, in a sense, everything we're doing is natural because we, like, Homo sapiens are part of a natural process. And maybe in another sense, everything we're doing is not natural. But then why does that matter? What's the moral relevance of something being natural versus not natural?
Right.
Lots of stuff that happens in the natural world is just really awful. Huge amounts of cannibalism, rape, murder, suffering. So it's not clear why we would care about something being natural rather than non-natural. But then the second question is, let's consider this virtual reality again, this experience machine that you could plug yourself into. And as part of the description, I said, none of this would be real. You'd have all of these interactions with people that you think are friends and so on, but that wouldn't be real. And I think you could very well push back on that and say, why should something be physically instantiated, like, in order for it to count as a real experience?
Right.
Why is it not the case that in this virtual reality you're interacting with algorithms, but that's just as much, at least it's possible for that to be just as much friendship as if you're interacting with people who are, flesh and blood. And I think it's hard to explain kind of what the difference would be. Because, if you think about Star Trek, Jean-Luc Picard can be friends with Data, an android. He's not kind of biological, but, we think that you can still have kind of moral worth and friendships and so on with creatures that are not made of kind of human biology. In which case, why does the fact that something merely lives on silicone, why wouldn't that, or is kind of seemingly merely software, why does that mean you couldn't have kind of a genuine friendship with that thing, if it acts in a sufficiently sophisticated way, perhaps?